Millionaire sees the waitress's son who looks just like him, and the boy says, "Daddy?" If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. The digital clock on the Porsche's dashboard read 9:47 p.m. when Jason Miller finally decided to stop. His back ached after hours in tense meetings, and the office coffee had long since worn off. The small roadside diner wasn't his usual style, but at that moment, any place would do. He just needed a few minutes of silence, away from the spreadsheets, reports, and endless negotiations that had consumed his day. The bell on the door chimed when he entered. The atmosphere was simple but clean, some Formica tables laminated, menus, and the unmistakable aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Soft music played in the background, barely audible beneath the scattered conversations of the few customers present. Jason chose a table near the window, instinctively adjusting the, say, Italian tie that at that point in the day seemed to be choking him. His fingers drummed on the table as he waited for service, a nervous habit he'd developed over years of commanding one of the country's largest companies. That's when he heard it, a crystalline, pure laugh that, for some inexplicable reason, made his heart skip a beat. His eyes searched for the source of the sound and found a little boy no more than 5 years old playing with a plastic toy car on one of the tables. The boy pushed the toy, making engine sounds with his mouth, completely absorbed in his own world. There was something about that scene that hypnotized him. Perhaps it was the way the boy furrowed his brow in concentration, or how his eyes sparkled with each imaginary turn the car took. For a moment, Jason found himself transported to his own childhood memories, so distant they seemed to belong to another life. "May I take your order, sir?" The soft voice brought him back to reality. It was a young woman of no more than 30, dark hair tied in a simple bun, impeccably clean uniform, and a name tag that read Sarah. There was a singular dignity in her posture, something that didn't match the modest atmosphere of the diner. "An espresso, please." "No sugar," he replied. Automatically, his eyes still fixed on the figure of the boy. That's when it happened. The little boy, in one of his imaginary maneuvers with the car, looked in his direction. Their eyes met, and Jason felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Those eyes. There was something disturbingly familiar about them. The boy jumped down from his chair, ignoring Sarah's worried call, and ran toward him with the confidence that only children possess. He stopped inches from his table, the plastic car still firmly in his small hands, and smiled. A smile that Jason knew well. It was the same one he saw every morning in the mirror, except this one was pure, without the marks that decades of negotiations had left on his. "Daddy!" The word echoed through the diner like thunder on a clear day. Sarah dropped her tray, cups shattered on the floor, but Jason barely registered the noise. His entire world had been reduced to that moment, that word, that face that seemed a miniature version of his own self from 30 years ago. "Ethan," Sarah ran to them, her face red with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, sir. He does this sometimes, with some customers. Kids, you know how they are. Ethan, come here right now." But Jason couldn't move, couldn't speak. His hands trembled slightly as he watched Sarah pick up the boy, murmuring apologies and moving away quickly. Ethan still looked at him over his mother's shoulder, waving cheerfully, as if they shared a secret. The coffee arrived, brought by another waitress, but Jason didn't touch it. His mind, trained to analyze numbers and predict market trends, now spun in a whirlwind of possibilities and memories that he had buried deep in his past. That boy, those eyes, that smile, it couldn't be coincidence. During the following week, Jason couldn't concentrate on anything. The board meetings seemed to happen in another dimension, while his mind constantly returned to that night at the diner. Catherine, his wife, a respected senator and central figure in the national political scene, noticed his distraction during dinner. "You're different," she commented, her perceptive eyes studying him over the wineglass. "Are the negotiations with the Chinese worrying you that much?" Jason forced a smile, catching himself admiring how, even after 15 years of marriage, Catherine maintained that impeccable posture of someone always ready for an official photo. "Just tired," he answered vaguely, poking at the food on his plate. But it wasn't fatigue. It was a restlessness that consumed him from within, a doubt that grew with each hour. That's why, the next night, he found himself again parking his car in front of the same diner. This time, however, it wasn't a coincidence. Sarah was there, efficient and discreet as before, but her eyes widened slightly when she recognized him. Ethan was playing at a table in the back, this time with a coloring book. When the boy saw him, his face lit up. "It's the coffee friend," he exclaimed, running toward him before Sarah could stop him. Jason felt his heart tighten. "Coffee friend?" he asked softly, as the boy installed himself in the chair beside him without ceremony. "Yeah, because you drink coffee here now," Ethan replied, with the simple logic of children. "Want to see my drawing?" For the next hour, Jason found himself immersed in Ethan's colorful world. The boy talked about his favorite superheroes, about how he wanted to be an astronaut, about the dog he dreamed of having. Each expression, each gesture of the boy was like a mirror of the past, reflecting memories that Jason had of himself in childhood. Sarah observed the scene from a distance, nervous, but keeping her distance. There was something in her eyes, fear, perhaps, or guilt. When Ethan was finally called for dinner, Jason seized the moment. "Sarah," he called, his voice softer than usual. "Can't we talk for a moment?" She hesitated, looking around as if searching for an escape route. "I'm in the middle of my shift, sir." "Jason," he completed. "My name is Jason Miller." Her face paled as she recognized the name. Who didn't know? Jason Miller. His face was frequently on the covers of business magazines, his name synonymous with entrepreneurial success. "Please," he insisted. 5 minutes. Sarah reluctantly nodded, sitting at the table. Her fingers played nervously with her uniform apron. "Ethan, is he 5 years old?" asked Jason, getting straight to the point. 5 years and 4 months, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "And his father isn't present," Sarah cut him off, standing up abruptly. "Excuse me, I need to get back to work." But Jason had already made his decision. When Ethan returned to say goodbye, bringing one of his drawings as a gift, the businessman noticed the half-empty glass of water the boy had used. Carefully, so as not to be seen, he kept the glass in his briefcase. The next morning, the most discreet and reliable laboratory in the city received a sample for DNA testing. Jason could barely sleep while waiting for the result. When the envelope finally arrived, his hands trembled as he opened it. 9% compatibility. The paper slid from his fingers, floating to his office floor like a leaf in autumn. The words danced before his eyes, confirming what his heart had known since that first night at the diner. He had a son. The office on the top floor of the corporate building was silent when Jason arrived, even before sunrise. His dark circles revealed another sleepless night, while his mind teemed with thousands of unanswered questions. How was it possible that he had a son and didn't know? How had Sarah managed to keep this secret for so long? Kevin, his younger brother and right-hand man in business, entered the room without knocking as he always did. He stopped when he saw his brother's condition. "You look terrible," he commented, sitting in the leather armchair across from the desk. "Catherine called me last night, worried. Said you've been distant, disappearing at night. What's going on?" Jason studied his brother's face for a long moment. Kevin had always been his confidant, his safe harbor in business and personal storms. But something in his instinct made him hesitate. "I need to show you something," he finally said, reaching for the envelope with the DNA test result. He carefully observed his brother's reaction as he read the document. Kevin's expression changed, subtly, so subtly that anyone else wouldn't have noticed. But Jason knew every micro-expression on that face. "You already knew," he stated. It wasn't a question. Kevin put the paper on the desk, adjusting his tie in a nervous gesture. "Jason, you need to understand." "Understand what?" Jason's voice was dangerously calm. "Understand that my own brother hid the existence of my son from me?" "It was for your own good." Kevin stood up, walking around the room. "You were about to close the merger with the European group. Catherine was starting her campaign for the Senate. An illegitimate child would have destroyed everything." The word illegitimate hit Jason like a slap. He has a name, Ethan, and he's not illegitimate, he's my son. Be rational, Kevin approached, using the tone that always worked in difficult negotiations. That woman, Sarah, she was just a temporary receptionist at an event. It was one night a mistake. Catherine took care of the situation. Catherine? Jason felt his blood freeze. What exactly do you mean by Catherine took care of the situation? Kevin's silence was more eloquent than any answer. Jason felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. His wife, the woman who had slept by his side for 15 years, had conspired to keep his own son away from him. How much? He asked, his voice shaking with contained anger. How much did you offer her? She refused the money, Kevin replied, surprising Jason. Catherine offered a considerable amount, but Sarah, she simply disappeared. We thought it was better that way. You were building something important, Jason. We couldn't let me know I had a son. Jason rose abruptly, his chair hitting the wall. Couldn't let me decide for myself. Who else knew? Who else participated in this conspiracy? Kevin looked away, and Jason realized there was much more to be discovered. His perfect, controlled world was crumbling, revealing lies and betrayals in every crack. Leave, he ordered his brother. Leave before I do something I'll regret. When he was alone, Jason allowed himself to collapse in his chair. The photos on his desk now seemed to mock him. He and Catherine at charity events, inaugurations, political dinners, a perfect facade built upon a monumental lie. He picked up his cell phone and for the first time in his life, cancelled all his appointments for the day. There was only one place he needed to be, a roadside diner where his true self awaited him, in the form of a 5-year-old boy who liked toy cars and dreamed of being an astronaut. But when he arrived, he found only empty chairs and frightened looks. Sarah wasn't on her shift, they said. In fact, she had quit that very morning, collected her belongings and left without leaving an address. Jason felt a tightness in his chest. They had gotten there first. Somehow Catherine or Kevin had found out and interfered again, but this time it would be different. This time he wouldn't let his son disappear. The Miller mansion was silent when Jason arrived, except for the sound of Catherine's heels echoing on the marble floor of the entrance hall. She was waiting for him in the study, impeccable in her navy blue suit, an untouched glass of whiskey on the table. I thought you'd come earlier, she said, her voice controlled as always. Kevin called me. Of course he did. Jason closed the door behind him. You've always been very good at conspiring behind my back. Catherine took a sip of her drink, her eyes never leaving his. Don't be dramatic, darling. We did what was necessary. Necessary? Jason felt anger growing in his chest. Was it necessary to hide my son from me? Was it necessary to threaten a pregnant, lonely woman? I didn't threaten her, Catherine corrected calmly. I offered a dignified solution for everyone. She chose to disappear. After you cornered her. My God, Catherine, how could you? How could you look me in the eyes all these years knowing I had a son? Catherine rose, walking to the window that overlooked the impeccably maintained garden. Do you remember where we were 5 years ago, Jason? I was starting my campaign for the Senate. You were about to achieve the biggest merger in the company's history. A child out of wedlock would have destroyed everything. And now? Jason approached, his voice trembling. What happens now that I know the truth? Catherine turned to him, a cold smile on her lips. Now, darling, you're going to do exactly what you've always done. Nothing. She walked to her briefcase, removing a folder of documents. Remember our prenuptial agreement? The one you signed without reading completely, so in love you were? There's an interesting clause about children out of wedlock. Jason took the papers with trembling hands. The clause was clear. Any scandal involving illegitimate children would result in the loss of 60% of his assets and shares to Catherine. You can't do this, he muttered. I can, and I will, Catherine responded, her voice soft but relentless. If you try to approach that child, if you try to recognize him publicly, you'll lose everything. Not just your money, but your reputation, your legacy. Think carefully, Jason. Is it worth destroying everything we've built for a one-night mistake? He's not a mistake, Jason replied. his voice finding strength. "Ethan is my son." "Ethan?" Catherine laughed softly. "So you're already that familiar. Jason, be sensible. That woman and that child don't belong in our world. They were fine until you showed up. Leave things as they are." But something had changed in Jason. The image of Ethan playing with his toy car, his innocent smile, his pure joy, all of it was worth more than any financial empire. "No," he said simply. "Not this time, Catherine. I won't abandon my son." "So you're prepared to lose everything?" Catherine approached, her eyes dangerously bright. "Your fortune, your position on the board, your reputation, because that's what will happen. A scandal like this will destroy your career and mine. Is that what you want?" Jason looked at the woman before him, seeing her truly for the first time in 15 years. How had he been so blind? "You're right. About one thing," he said, heading for the door. "I'm going to lose a lot. But if I do nothing, I'll lose something much more valuable, the chance to know my son." He left the study, leaving Catherine speechless, for the first time without an answer. In the hallway, he took out his cell phone and called his private investigator. He needed to find Sarah and Ethan before it was too late. Before Catherine could interfere again. The first week of searching was frustrating. Jason used all the resources at his disposal, but Sarah seemed to have vanished into thin air with Ethan. The private investigator, Marcus Thompson, one of the best in the country, brought only fragmented information. "She's smart," explained Marcus, spreading photos and documents across Jason's desk. "Doesn't use credit cards, doesn't have social media, changed her phone, but everyone leaves traces, Mr. Miller. It's just a matter of time." Meanwhile, Catherine's behavior had subtly changed. She maintained appearances in public, of course. She was too experienced a politician to make slip-ups. But at home, the silence between them had become deafening. Jason frequently caught her on the phone, speaking in whispers, quickly ending calls when he approached. It was Angela, his former secretary, now retired, who brought the first real clue. She appeared without warning in his office on a rainy afternoon, carrying an old cardboard box. "I found this while cleaning up," she said, placing the box on the desk. "They're documents from 5 years ago. I thought you might want to see them." Inside the box, among yellowed reports and memos, Jason found something that made his heart stop. A photo from the corporate event where it all began. There was Sarah, beautiful in her receptionist uniform, smiling discreetly at the camera. But it wasn't the photo that caught his attention, but a partially burned envelope hidden beneath it. With trembling hands, Jason removed the fragments of paper from the envelope. It was a letter, the ink already faded by time but still legible in parts. Sarah's delicate handwriting jumped from the pages. "Dear Jason, I know you may not remember me, but I need to tell you something important. I'm pregnant and—" The rest was destroyed, but those few words were like daggers in his chest. She had tried to tell him. She had tried to reach him. "Your wife intercepted the letter," Angela explained softly. "I saw her burning papers at that time, but I didn't know. I only put the pieces together now after hearing the rumors in the office." "Rumors?" Jason raised his eyes, alarmed. "People talk, Mr. Miller. About your visits to the diner, about the boy. Catherine has been asking questions, probing employees. She's preparing something." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Catherine was known for her strategic ability, for planning each move with surgical precision. What was she plotting? The answer came the next morning, when Marcus burst into his office without being announced. "I found them," he said, breathless. "Sarah and the boy. They're in a small town inland, 3 hours from here. She got a job at a local bakery." The relief Jason felt was momentary. Marcus wasn't finished. "But there's more," continued the investigator. "I wasn't the only one who discovered them. Catherine hired another investigator. He arrived there yesterday." Jason was already on his feet, grabbing his jacket. "What else did you find out?" "Sarah is frightened. Someone has been spreading rumors in town, tarnishing her reputation. The bakery owner is already threatening to fire her. And Ethan, he's having problems at the new school. The other children taunt him, calling him a liar when he talks about the businessman father he met." "My car. Now," Jason ordered, already heading for the elevator. He couldn't waste any more time. On the way to the parking lot, his cell phone rang. It was Kevin. "Don't do this, brother." Kevin's voice sounded urgent. "Catherine is 2 steps ahead of you. She has a plan to publicly discredit Sarah, make her look like a con artist. The press is already being prepped." "Then help me stop her," Jason replied, getting into the car. "I can't. She has evidence, documents that would compromise me. I'm sorry, Jason." The call ended, leaving only silence. Jason started the car, his mind focused on a single goal: to reach his son before it was too late, before Catherine transformed a truth into another of her carefully constructed political narratives. The small inland town seemed to have come out of an old painting, with its tree-lined streets and colorful houses. Jason found the bakery easily. It was the only establishment of its kind on the main street. His heart beat erratically as he parked the car. Through the window, he could see Sarah arranging bread on the shelves, even dressed simply with a white apron and her hair tied back. She maintained that dignity that had impressed him from the first moment. Ethan wasn't in sight. The bell on the door announced his entrance. Sarah froze when she saw him, a French bread still in her hands. "How did you find us?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Does it matter?" Jason replied, approaching cautiously. "Sarah, we need to talk about everything." "There's nothing to talk about." She backed away, putting the counter between them. "Your wife made things very clear the last time." "The last time?" 5 years ago." Sarah finally faced him, her eyes shining with contained tears. "When she found me in the hospital right after Ethan's birth, said if I tried to contact you, I would lose my son, that she had enough influence to declare me unfit as a mother." Jason felt his legs weaken. He had to lean on the counter. I didn't know anything about this, Sarah. I swear I didn't know any of it." "And now, what's changed?" she asked, her voice gaining strength. "You have your perfect life, your powerful wife, your billion-dollar company. What do you want with us?" "I want to know my son," he replied simply. "I want to be part of his life. I want to make up for every minute I lost in these 5 years." "Daddy?" The childish voice made both adults turn. Ethan was standing in the bakery's back door, still wearing his school uniform. His eyes, so similar to Jason's, sparkled with expectation. "I knew it," exclaimed the boy, running to hug Jason's legs. "I knew you were my real dad. The boys at school didn't believe me, but I knew." Jason knelt down, bringing himself to his son's height. His hands trembled as he touched the boy's hair, seeing up close every detail of his face that mirrored his own. "Ethan," Sarah called, softly. "Sweetheart, go to the back room, okay? Mommy needs to talk with your dad." The boy hugged Jason once more before obeying, whispering in his ear, "You'll stay this time, right?" When they were alone again, Sarah let the tears flow freely. "She already knows you're here," she said, "your wife. The man she sent has already spread throughout the town that I'm a con artist, that I'm trying to extort money from you. The bakery owner only hasn't fired me yet out of pity." "I'll fix this," Jason promised, his tone determined. "I'll tell the whole truth, Sarah, about the letter you tried to send me, about the threats, about everything." "And destroy your own life in the process?" She shook her head. "No, Jason, I can't let you do that." "It's not for you to decide," he replied, his voice soft but firm. "I've spent the last 5 years missing my son's first steps, his first words, his first smiles. I won't miss anything else, no matter the cost." Jason's cell phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. "Catherine is on her way. She has the press with her." "You need to get out of here," Jason decided quickly. "I have a country house, isolated, where no one will look. We can go there while I sort everything out." Sarah hesitated, looking in the direction where Ethan had disappeared. "And then? What happens then, Jason?" "Then," he held her hands gently, "we'll do what we should have done 5 years ago. We'll be a family, the way Ethan deserves. A way you deserve." The Miller country house emerged among the trees like an old postcard, with its preserved colonial architecture and gardens that seemed to come from a dream. Sarah held a sleeping Ethan in the back seat, while Jason guided the car along the dirt road that wound its way to the property. "It's beautiful," whispered Sarah, observing the building through the window misted by the rain that was beginning to fall. "My parents used to bring us here on vacations," Jason replied, a nostalgic smile on his lips. "Hey, it's the only place Catherine doesn't know about. I never brought her here, always said it was too rustic for her taste." The housekeeper, Mrs. Bennett, a grey-haired lady who had been taking care of the property for decades, received them with discretion and efficiency. Without asking questions, she prepared rooms, served hot chocolate, and kept her affectionate gaze on Ethan, who woke up enchanted with the new environment. "Are there horses here?" asked the boy, his face pressed against the living room window that faced the stables. "Two," replied Jason, feeling a wave of joy at seeing his son's enthusiasm. "Want to meet them tomorrow?" Ethan jumped with excitement, but Sarah gently intervened. "First, we need to sort out your enrollment at the new school, sweetheart. We can't leave your studies behind." It was as if a cloud passed over the boy's face. "But will the kids laugh at me again?" Jason felt his heart tighten. He knelt in front of his son, placing his hands on his small shoulders. "Nobody's going to laugh at you here, Ethan, I promise." That night, after Ethan fell asleep in his new room, hastily decorated by Mrs. Bennett with some old toys she found in the attic, Sarah and Jason sat on the porch. The sound of crickets and the scent of jasmine created an almost unreal atmosphere. "How are we going to make this work?" asked Sarah, her voice laden with concern. "Catherine won't simply give up. And your brother?" "Kevin called me an hour ago," Jason interrupted her, his face tense. "Catherine has called a press conference for tomorrow. She's going to announce that she's the victim of an extortion attempt." "My God," Sarah covered her face with her hands. "She's going to publicly destroy my reputation." "No," Jason took her hands in his. "I won't allow it. I have proof now, Sarah. The burned letter you tried to send me, Angela's testimony about Catherine intercepting your attempt to contact me. And there's more." He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Marcus discovered other things. Apparently we're not the only ones Catherine tried to silence over the years. There's a former employee, David Parker, who was unfairly fired 3 years ago. He has a recording. Catherine offering money for him to disappear after he discovered some irregularities in her campaign donations. Why didn't he use that recording before?" "Fear," Jason answered simply. "Catherine is powerful, Sarah. She has connections everywhere. But now he's willing to talk." A noise from Ethan's room interrupted the conversation. The boy was having a nightmare, calling for his mother between sobs. Sarah ran to calm him, and Jason watched from the door as she cradled her son, softly singing a lullaby. The scene hit him with full force. How many nights like this had he missed? How many nightmares, how many bedtime stories, how many precious moments had been stolen from him? His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. Another message from Kevin. "Catherine found out about the country house. She's furious. Be careful, brother. I've never seen her like this before." Jason looked at his son, now asleep in Sarah's lap, but her face illuminated by the moonlight coming through the window. No, he wouldn't let Catherine destroy this, even if it cost him his fortune, his position, everything he had built over the years. This time, he would fight with all his strength for what truly mattered. The morning brought with it the weight of reality. Jason watched, with a knot in his stomach, the live broadcast press conference on his laptop. Catherine was magnificent in her red outfit, her posture impeccable as she addressed journalists with carefully controlled tears in her eyes. "As a woman and politician who has always fought for family," her voice trembled just right, "I find myself forced to denounce a terrible extortion attempt. Their former temporary employee is trying to destroy my marriage, claiming to have a child by my husband." Sarah, who was watching by his side, choked back a sob. Jason gently squeezed her hand. "She's lying," whispered Sarah. "Every word." The broadcast was interrupted by urgent knocks on the door. It was Mrs. Bennett, her normally serene face marked with concern. "Mr. Jason, there are reporters." "They're coming up the main road." Jason ran to the window. A line of cars was approaching, raising dust on the dirt road. How had they discovered so quickly? "Kevin," he muttered, understanding hitting him like a punch. His own brother must have revealed the location. "Sarah, get Ethan. We have to leave here now." But it was too late. The first flashes were already exploding through the windows. Excited voices called their names. Questions were shouted. Ethan woke up, frightened by the noise. "Mommy? What's happening?" Sarah hugged him protectively while Jason tried to think of a way out. The house had a back entrance that led directly to the stables. If they could get there... "Mrs. Bennett?" he called quickly. "Do you still have that old car in the back garage?" The housekeeper nodded, immediately, understanding. "Yes, sir, and I know a secondary road that nobody else knows." "Great, take Sarah and Ethan out of here. I'll distract them." "No!" Sarah protested. "I'm not going to leave you to face this alone." "Sarah," Jason held her face between his hands. "Trust me, I have a plan, but I need you both safe first." A stronger flash illuminated the room, followed by more shouts. The reporters were getting closer. "Daddy," Ethan grabbed Jason's leg. "I don't want to go. I just found you." Jason knelt down, hugging his son tightly. "I'll find you, champion. I promise. But now I need you to be strong and take care of your mom, okay?" With tears in his eyes, Ethan solemnly nodded. Sarah still hesitated, but finally followed Mrs. Bennett toward the back of the house, carrying Ethan in her arms. As soon as they left, Jason took a deep breath and opened the front door. An avalanche of flashes and microphones hit him. "Mr. Miller, is it true you're hiding a lover and an illegitimate son? How do you respond to your wife's accusations? Why did you run away with the former employee?" Jason raised his hands, asking for silence. Years of experience with the press had prepared him for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice was firm and clear, "I came here to tell the truth, the whole truth." The reporters fell silent, eager for the story. Jason could see, from the corner of his eye, Mrs. Bennett's car discreetly moving away on the back road. His heart was with them, but now he needed to do his part. "Senator Catherine Miller lied to you today, lied to all of us for 5 years, and I have proof of this." A murmur ran through the crowd of journalists. Jason knew there was no going back now. What he was about to reveal would change everything forever. The conference room at the Central Hotel was packed. Journalists from across the country jostled for a better position, while cameras broadcast live every moment. Jason, seated behind a long table, maintained the firm posture that characterized him, even though inside his heart was beating erratically. Beside him, David Parker, the former employee whom Catherine had tried to silence, held a folder with documents. Angela, his former secretary, was also present, her hands intertwined on her lap in a nervous gesture. "5 years ago," Jason began, his voice echoing through the microphones, "a young woman tried to contact me. She was pregnant and just wanted me to know about my son. This letter," he held up the fragments of partially burned paper, "never reached me. It was intercepted and destroyed." A murmur ran through the audience, flashes fired incessantly. "My wife, Senator Catherine Miller, not only hid the existence of my son, but also threatened his mother. I have witnesses who will confirm every word I say here today." Angela leaned toward the microphone. "I saw the senator burn the letter. I saw when she ordered that all records of Sarah's presence at the corporate event be erased." David Parker took his cell phone and pressed play. Catherine's voice filled the room. "50,000 for you to disappear, Mr. Parker. It's a generous offer. Or would you prefer to face the consequences of messing with someone at my level?" The buzz in the room increased. Jason continued, "For 5 years I was deprived of the right to know my son. Ethan grew up without a father, not by choice of his mother, but because my own wife, a woman who built her political career defending family, chose to destroy one." The doors of the room opened violently. Catherine entered, her face a mask of controlled fury. Kevin followed her, looking uncomfortable. "This is a circus," she declared, her cutting voice. "A pathetic attempt to tarnish my reputation. Jason, you signed an agreement." "The prenuptial agreement?" Jason interrupted her, a slight smile on his lips. "The one that would make me lose 60% of my assets if I revealed the existence of a child outside the marriage. Interesting that you mention that, Catherine." He made a sign, and his lawyer, who was discreetly seated in the first row, rose with another set of documents. This agreement, continued Jason, was modified after being signed. The clause about children outside the marriage was added afterwards. We have forensic proof confirming the tampering of the document. Catherine paled. Kevin stepped forward, as if wanting to defend the senator, but Jason wasn't finished. My own brother, Kevin Miller, actively participated in this concealment scheme. He supervised the destruction of records, the manipulation of corporate documents, all to keep Ethan away from me. Jason, Kevin tried to intervene. You don't understand. It was to protect the company, the family. Family? Jason stood up, his voice thundering through the room. What family, Kevin? The one we built on? Lies. The one that destroyed an innocent child's chance to have a father. The journalists typed frantically on their notebooks and cell phones. The cameras hummed, capturing every expression, every word of that historic confrontation. I'm here today. Jason turned to the cameras, not just to clear Sarah's name, a woman who chose to raise our son alone instead of accepting a bribe to disappear. I'm here to publicly acknowledge Ethan is my son. And from today on, no threat, no agreement, no blackmail will prevent me from being the father he deserves. Catherine advanced toward him, her eyes sparkling. You'll regret this, Jason. Every penny you have... I don't care about the money, Catherine, he cut her off softly. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that really matters. The senator backed away as if she had been slapped. Her face, always so controlled, was beginning to show cracks in its mask of perfection. The press conference exploded, with questions, flashes, and exclamations. But Jason was already heading for the exit. His cell phone vibrated with a message from Mrs. Bennett. They are safe. Sarah saw everything on TV. She's crying, but with joy. For the first time in weeks, Jason truly smiled. The storm hadn't passed yet, but finally the truth was coming to light. The news spread like wildfire in dry straw. Within hours, all television channels were broadcasting excerpts from the press conference. Social media boiled with opinions, hashtags, and heated debates. Catherine's carefully constructed image as a defender of traditional family was crumbling with each new revelation. In the company office, the atmosphere was like an earthquake. The board called an emergency meeting, and Jason watched from the window of the 30th floor as he waited to be called. The city seemed so small down below, so distant from the drama that was unfolding. Mr. Miller, the board secretary called him, they're ready to receive you. The boardroom was silent when he entered. 12 serious faces stared at him from the huge oval table. The chairman of the board, George Adams, a white-haired gentleman who had known Jason since he was an intern, was the first to speak. Jason, do you understand the delicate position in which you've placed the company? I understand perfectly. George, he replied, maintaining his calm, just as I understand that I hid the truth for too long. It's not just about the truth, another board member intervened. It's about stability. The shares have already fallen 12% since your press conference. Investors are nervous. Jason nodded, removing an envelope from his jacket. That's why I brought this. My letter of resignation. A murmur ran through the room. George leaned forward, surprised. You don't need to do this, Jason. We can manage the crisis, create a narrative indie. No, Jason gently interrupted him. Enough of narratives, of fabricated stories. I've spent the last 5 years missing the most important moments. Curve my son's life, because people around me decided that lies were necessary to protect something bigger. I won't make the same mistake. Meanwhile, in a small hotel on the coast, Sarah watched the repercussions on television, with Ethan asleep in her lap. Mrs. Bennett had chosen the hideout well, a discreet place, far from the spotlight where they could wait for the dust to settle. Sarah's cell phone vibrated with a message from Jason. It's done. I turned in my resignation. I'm on my way. Silent tears ran down her face. After so long living in the shadows, running, trying to protect Ethan, she could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Ethan stirred in his sleep, murmuring something about horses and his dad. Sarah smiled, stroking her son's hair. He had spent the morning drawing, creating a comic book about a super dad who fought against villains to protect his family. The door to the room opened softly. Jason entered, looking exhausted, but at peace. Without saying a word, he sat beside them, enveloping both in a gentle hug. "How was it?" Sarah whispered. "Difficult," he admitted, "but necessary. The board accepted my resignation. Catherine, she's already announced that she's temporarily stepping away from the Senate to attend to personal matters." "And Kevin?" Jason sighed. "He tried to call me several times, said he wants to explain that there are more things I need to know, but now's not the time." Ethan moved again, sleepily opening his eyes. His face lit up when he saw Jason. "Dad, you came back." The boy jumped into his lap. "I saw you on TV. You looked like a superhero." Jason laughed, the first truly free laugh in weeks. "Superhero? I don't know about that. I think I'm just trying to be a normal dad." "The best dad in the world," Ethan declared with the conviction that only children possess. Sarah observed the scene with an overflowing heart. The last few weeks had been an emotional roller coaster, but there, in that simple moment of father and son together, everything seemed to make sense. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. Jason looked out the window, where the sun was beginning to set over the sea. Now we start over, the right way this time." A week after the press conference that shook the country, Jason, Sarah, and Ethan settled in a beachfront house, far from the bustle of the big city. The place was spacious but cozy, with a yard that went straight down to the beach and a porch perfect for watching the sunset. Ethan had adapted surprisingly well to the change. His new school was smaller and more welcoming, and for the first time since the whole story exploded, he could just be another child without curious looks or malicious comments. "Look, Dad," he shouted from the water's edge, holding a huge shell. "It looks like pirate treasure." Jason smiled, watching his son run barefoot across the sand. It was amazing how such simple moments could bring so much happiness. A few meters away, Sarah was organizing a small picnic, her loose hair dancing with the sea breeze. "He's so happy," she commented when Jason approached to help. "I've never seen him like this before." "I've never been like this before either," he confessed, gently, taking her hand. The moment was interrupted by the ring of Jason's cell phone. It was Angela, his ex-secretary. "Mr. Miller, sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. The board held an extraordinary vote this morning. Kevin has been removed from the directorship." Jason felt a weight in his chest. Despite everything, Kevin was still his brother. "There's more," continued Angela. "We found documents in his office. It seems he didn't act alone in the cover-up. There was an entire network of people involved, including some board members, and, well, there's something about Senator Catherine that you need to see." "What is it?" "I'd rather not talk over the phone, but it's important. Very important." Sarah noticed the change in Jason's demeanor. "Did something happen?" He hesitated before answering. The last few weeks had been peaceful, of reconnection, of building, something new. Was it worth diving back into the past? "Angela found something," he finally said, "about Catherine and Kevin, something that could change everything." Sarah sat beside him on the picnic blanket. "Do you want to know?" "I don't know," he admitted, watching Ethan, who was now building a sandcastle. "Part of me wants to leave. All this behind, move on, but you need to know the complete truth," Sarah completed, "to be able to really move forward." At that moment, Ethan ran up to them, his little face illuminated by the sun and speckled with sand. "Dad, come. See? I found a crab. He looks like the one from that movie we watched yesterday." Jason smiled, getting up to follow his son. Yes, he needed to know the truth. Not for revenge or resentment, but because his son deserved to grow up in a world where truth mattered. "I'll meet with Angela tomorrow," he decided, turning to Sarah. "Do you want to come with me?" She nodded, intertwining her fingers with his. Together. The afternoon continued perfectly, with Ethan telling fantastic stories about pirates and hidden treasures, Sarah preparing sandwiches that were declared the best in the world by a 5-year-old boy with sand up to his ears, and Jason realizing that regardless of what Angela had discovered, he had already found his true treasure. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, the three sat together on the porch. Ethan, tired from his adventures, fell asleep in his father's lap. "You know," Sarah said softly, "when all this started, I was so afraid. Of you, of Catherine, of the future. Now I just feel peace. Even with all the uncertainties, even with more revelations to come, I know we're on the right path." Jason kissed the top of his sleeping son's head, smelling the sea breeze in his hair. "The path we should have followed from the beginning," he completed. Angela's office was exactly as Jason remembered, meticulously organized with labeled folders and colorful post-its everywhere. She received them with a warm hug, her eyes lighting up when she saw Sarah. "I'm glad you both came," she said, indicating the chairs in front of her. "What I have to show, well, it affects both of you." Angela opened a drawer and took out a red folder, different from all the others on her desk. "I found this in Kevin's personal safe. These are documents that go back 5 years to when it all began." Jason and Sarah exchanged apprehensive looks as Angela spread the papers on the desk. "Catherine didn't act alone," continued Angela. "In fact, she wasn't even the one who started all this. It was Kevin." "What do you mean?" Jason leaned forward, confused. "Your brother was about to lose everything at that time. He had made risky investments, used company money without authorization. When Catherine found out, she saw an opportunity. She would help cover up his misappropriations. In exchange, he would help her. We'll keep Sarah away." Sarah put her hand to her mouth, shocked. "So that's why my attempts to contact Jason never reached him? Kevin intercepted everything?" "Exactly." Angela picked up another document. "But there's something worse. Catherine used this as blackmail for years, not just against Kevin, but against other company executives as well. Each person who helped hide the truth about Ethan had something to hide." Jason ran his hands over his face, feeling the weight of each revelation. "That's why Kevin seemed so nervous in recent weeks. He knew that if the truth about Ethan came out, all the other truths would come with it," completed Angela. "And they did. The federal police are already investigating the misappropriations in the company. It's only a matter of time until they get to Catherine." Sarah, who had been silent, absorbing everything, finally spoke. "There's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't told us yet." Angela hesitated, picking up a final envelope. "This arrived this morning. It's from Kevin's lawyer. Your brother wants to make a deal." "Jason, he's willing to tell everything, present all the evidence against Catherine in exchange for..." "In exchange for what?" "Your help. He's practically bankrupt. All his assets have been frozen by the investigation. He wants you to help him legally, to testify that he was also a victim of Catherine." Jason stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace, oblivious to the dramas unfolding in that room. "And was he?" asked Sarah, softly. "A victim?" "No," replied Jason, his voice firm. "He made his choices. They all made them. They chose money and power over truth, over family." "What are you going to do?" asked Angela. Jason turned to them, his decision already made. "I'm going to do what I should have done 5 years ago, choose what's right. Kevin will have to face the consequences of his actions, just as Catherine will." Sarah stood up, taking his hand. "And us? We'll continue building our life. Ethan deserves to grow up seeing that the truth, however difficult it may be, is always worth it." When they left the office, the afternoon sun bathed the city in a golden glow. In the back seat of the car, Ethan's backpack, forgotten after dropping him off at school in the morning, had a new drawing attached, a happy family on the beach with a smiling sun in the corner of the page. "He drew this last night," said Sarah, noticing Jason's look at the drawing. "Said it was us, our family." Jason smiled, feeling a peace that no revelation could shake. In the end, that's what mattered. The family they were building, the love that not even 5 years of lies could destroy. The news arrived on a Wednesday morning. Ethan needed to make a presentation at school about his family. "Family Day," explained Orr. The teacher threw a note, would be an opportunity for children to share their unique stories. Sarah found her son sitting on the porch, a blank sheet in front of him, the pencil nervously spinning between his small fingers. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, sitting beside him. "The other kids. They're going to talk about their normal families," Ethan replied, his voice soft. "With Mom and Dad, who have always been together." Sarah felt her heart tighten, despite all efforts to protect. Ethan, some wounds were still healing. "Hey, champ," Jason's voice sounded from the door. He had arrived earlier from work, carrying a mysterious box. "I brought something for you." Ethan looked up, curiosity replacing sadness. Jason sat with them, carefully opening the box. "Do you know what this is?" he asked, removing an old album. "These are photos of me when I was your age, and look." He opened to a specific page showing a photo where a 5-year-old boy smiled, holding a toy car very similar to the one Ethan loved so much. "You liked cars too," exclaimed Ethan, his eyes shining. "And that's not all," continued Jason, turning more pages. "Look how you furrow your brow just like I did. And that smile, just like yours." For hours, the three stayed there, sharing stories, discovering similarities, building bridges between past and present. Sarah brought her own photos, showing Ethan how she also loved the beach when she was little, exactly like him. "I think," said Ethan finally, picking up his pencil with renewed determination, "I already know what I'm going to tell at school." On the day of the presentation, the classroom was full of anxious parents. Sarah and Jason sat in the back rows, trying not to draw too much attention. There were still curious looks, still whispers, but they had learned to ignore them. When it was Ethan's turn, he walked to the front of the room with firm steps, holding a colorful poster. "My family is different," he began, his voice clear and confident. "For a long time it was just me and my mom, who is the strongest person I know. She always protected me, always loved me enough for two." Sarah held Jason's hand tightly, silent tears running down her face. "Then one day, I met my dad. It wasn't like in princess stories where everything is magical from the beginning. It was better because it was real. My dad chose me. He fought to stay with me, even when it was hard." Jason felt his own face wet, but didn't care about wiping away the tears. "Some people think family has to be just one way," continued Ethan, showing his poster where he had drawn himself between Sarah and Jason, all holding hands. "But I learned that family is about love, about choosing to stay together even when it's complicated. It's about telling the truth even when it hurts." The teacher, visibly moved, had to take a sip of water before she could applaud. Soon the whole room joined in the applause. After the presentation, as they walked along the beach on their way home, Ethan ran ahead, chasing seagulls and laughing. "He's amazing," said Jason, watching his son. "So strong, so wise for someone so small." "He had good examples," replied Sarah, smiling. "He learned that true love doesn't need perfection, just honesty." That night, after Ethan fell asleep hugging his favorite toy car, Jason found Sarah on the porch, contemplating the stars. "You know," she said softly, "for years I was afraid that when Ethan discovered the whole truth, he would be hurt, confused. But today he showed us that he understands more about love and family than many adults," completed Jason. The sound of the waves cradled the night, bringing that peace that can only be found when we're finally where we should be, with whom we should be. Kevin's phone call came on a Sunday afternoon, when the family was returning from a walk in the park. Jason looked at the familiar number flashing on the screen, hesitating before answering. "We need to talk, brother." Kevin's voice sounded different, older, more tired. "Not about the past, not about Catherine, about Ethan." Jason felt his body stiffen. "What about my son?" He's entitled to our parents' inheritance, the part that would be yours, that you never wanted to touch. I've been thinking, maybe it's time to do the right thing at least once." Sarah, noticing the tension in Jason's posture, took Ethan inside the house, leaving him free to talk. "Why now, Kevin?" asked Jason, sitting on the porch steps. "Because I'm losing everything." Kevin's voice trembled. "The money, the position, the respect, but worse than that, I lost my brother. And the more I think about it, the more I realize it was because of choices I made. Wrong choices. Silence hung between them for a few moments, filled only by the distant sound of the waves. "Ethan asked about you the other day," Jason finally said. "He wanted to know why his uncle never comes to visit." "And what did you answer?" "The truth. That sometimes adults make mistakes, but that doesn't mean they can't try to fix things." Kevin let out a heavy sigh. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me?" Jason watched through the window as Ethan showed Sarah a new trick he had learned with his collection of toy cars. The boy's smile, so pure and true, illuminated the entire environment. "It's not about forgiveness, Kevin. It's about reconstruction. And reconstruction takes time. Can I at least try? Get to know my nephew properly, be the uncle he deserves?" Before Jason could answer, Ethan appeared on the porch, still holding his favorite toy car. "Dad, who's on the phone?" Jason covered the microphone for a moment. "It's your Uncle Kevin, son." Ethan's eyes widened with curiosity. "Does he like cars too?" On the other end of the line, Kevin let out a choked laugh hearing the question. "Why don't you ask him?" suggested Jason, passing the phone to his son. "Hello, Uncle Kevin. I have a collection of cars. Want to see them someday?" The conversation that followed was simple, as only conversations between children and adults can be. Ethan talked about his cars, about school, about how he loved living near the beach. Kevin listened, responding with the genuine enthusiasm of someone receiving a second chance. Sarah returned to the porch, sitting beside Jason. "Is everything okay?" she whispered. "I don't know," he answered honestly, "but maybe it can be." When Ethan finally returned the phone, he was radiant. "Dad, Uncle Kevin said he has a car just like mine, the same color and everything. Can we visit him someday?" Jason exchanged a look with Sarah, who nodded softly. "Kevin," he called into the phone, "how about having lunch with us next Sunday?" "Here at our house?" The answer came in a choked voice. "I'd love that, brother." After he hung up, Jason remained on the porch for a long time, watching the sun set on the horizon. Sarah joined him, intertwining her fingers with his. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "No," he admitted. "But Ethan taught me something. It's important. Family isn't just about the past, it's about the choices we make every day." Ethan came running back, jumping onto his father's lap. "Dad, can I show my entire collection to Uncle Kevin when he comes?" "Of course you can, champ," replied Jason, messing up his son's hair. "And you know what? I think he'll love every minute of it." Sunday dawned with an extraordinarily blue sky. Sarah had woken up early to prepare lunch, filling the house with delicious aromas that made Ethan appear in the kitchen every 5 minutes, asking if it was time yet. Jason observed the preparations with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The night before, he had had a long conversation with Sarah about the risks of allowing Kevin back into their lives. What if it's just another manipulation, he had questioned. What if he hurts Ethan somehow? Sarah, with her quiet wisdom, responded while folding their son's clothes. "Sometimes, Jason, people need a chance to show their best. Ethan taught us that, didn't he?" Now, as he set the table on the porch with a view of the sea, Jason thought about how his 5-year-old son had in fact become the wisest teacher he had ever had. The sound of the doorbell made Ethan jump with excitement. "He's here. Dad, can I open it?" Jason nodded, following his son to the door. Kevin was standing there, visibly nervous, holding a package wrapped in colorful paper. "Uncle Kevin," Ethan exclaimed, his eyes fixed on the present. "Is that for me?" "Ethan," Sarah called softly. "What did we talk about regarding manners?" The boy composed himself immediately. "Sorry. Hi, Uncle Kevin. I'm glad you came." Kevin smiled, and for the first time in years, Jason saw something of the brother he had known in childhood, that boy who always had a sincere smile on his face. "Hi, champ." Kevin knelt down to his nephew's height. "I brought something special. For you. It's a car I had when I was a child, just like your favorite one." Ethan opened the present with reverent care, his eyes shining when he saw the vintage car perfectly preserved. "It's just like it," he shouted, running to show Sarah. "Mom, look!" Sarah received Kevin with a gentle hug, surprising both him and Jason. "Welcome to our home," she said simply. Lunch transpired in a surprisingly light atmosphere. Ethan monopolized the conversation, telling about his school, his friends, his adventures on the beach. Kevin listened to every word with genuine attention, asking questions and laughing at the child's jokes. "Remember when we were like that?" Kevin asked Jason during a pause in the conversation. "We used to spend hours playing with our cars in our parents' yard." "I remember," replied Jason, a nostalgic smile forming. "You always let me win the races." "I did not," protested Kevin, laughing. "You were really good." Ethan watched the interaction, fascinated. "You guys played with cars, too?" "Oh yes," replied Kevin, his eyes shining with memories. "Your dad was the king of improvised tracks. He knew how to make the best curves with chalk on the ground." The rest of the afternoon was filled with stories from the brothers' childhood, each one making Ethan laugh and ask for more. Sarah watched, everything with a serene smile, occasionally exchanging meaningful looks with Jason. When the sun began to set, tinting the sky pink and orange, Kevin prepared to leave. Ethan, exhausted but happy, had fallen asleep on the sofa, hugging both cars, his and his uncle's gift. "Jason," called Kevin before leaving, his voice serious, "I know one lunch doesn't erase years of mistakes, but I want you to know, seeing you with your son, seeing the family you've built, made me realize how much time I wasted chasing things that didn't matter." "And Catherine?" asked Jason, the question that had hung in the air since the beginning of the day. "I haven't spoken to her in weeks," replied Kevin. "She tried to convince me to participate in another scheme, something to try to recover her political image, but I think I finally learned my lesson." Sarah approached, carrying a small container. "Take some of the dessert," she offered. Ethan insisted on saving. "Some for you." Kevin accepted the container with tears in his eyes. "You've built something beautiful here," he said. "Something real. Thank you for letting me be a part of it, even if just a little bit." "A little bit is a beginning," replied Jason, surprising himself by pulling his brother into a hug. The peace of the following weeks was interrupted by a call from Angela on a rainy Thursday. Jason was helping Ethan with his homework when the phone rang. "Jason," her voice was tense, "Catherine is going to give an exclusive interview tonight. She's announcing that she'll tell her version of the story." Sarah, who was passing through the living room at that moment, stopped when she saw the expression on Jason's face. "What kind of version?" he asked, dreading the answer. "She's promoting it as the truth behind the scandal. It will air in prime time." Ethan, noticing the change in the atmosphere, put down his coloring pencil. "Dad, is everything okay?" Jason forced a smile. "Everything's great, champ. How about going to play in your room a bit while I finish this call?" As soon as Ethan left, Sarah sat beside him. "What does she want now?" "Attention," replied Angela over the phone. "Polls show that her popularity plummeted after the revelations. She's trying to reverse the game, to position herself as a victim." That night, after Ethan went to sleep, Jason and Sarah sat down to watch the interview. Catherine was impeccable as always, wearing a discreet outfit in pastel tones that made her appear softer, more vulnerable. "It was a very difficult period," she was saying, her eyes welling up just right. "Discovering that my husband had a child outside of marriage was devastating, but what hurt me the most was seeing how the story was distorted." Sarah squeezed Jason's hand hard. "All I did," continued Catherine, "was try to protect that child. I offered financial support guarantees, but the boy's mother refused everything. She preferred to disappear." "That's a lie," exclaimed Sarah, standing up indignantly. "She threatened me, said she would take Ethan away from me." The interview continued, with Catherine painting a picture of herself as a dedicated wife who had only tried to keep the family together. She talked about her social projects, about how she had always fought for children's rights in Congress. "And now," she concluded, with tears in her eyes, "I just want a chance to be part of this boy's life, to be the stepmother he deserves." Jason turned off the television, his face a mask of contained fury. "She doesn't give up." "Dad?" Ethan's small voice came from the stairs. He was standing there, hugging his toy car, clearly having heard part. of the conversation. "Ethan, dear, you should be sleeping," Sarah ran to him. "The lady on TV, was she talking about me?" he asked, his big eyes full of confusion. Jason and Sarah exchanged looks. They had promised to always be honest with Ethan, but how to explain something so complex to a child? "Come here, son," called Jason, sitting on the sofa and putting Ethan on his lap. "Remember when we talked about how some people don't know how to deal with the truth?" Ethan nodded. "That lady on TV, Catherine, she's having difficulty with the truth now. She's telling the story her way, not the way it really happened. Like when Tommy from my class said he didn't copy my homework, but I saw him copying." Sarah couldn't contain a smile. The simplicity of child logic was sometimes the most accurate. "Exactly like that, sweetheart," she sat beside them. "But you know what's most important? It's that we're together now, as a family. And nothing she says can change that." "Not even if she really wants to be my stepmom?" asked Ethan, his voice small. "No," replied Jason firmly. "You have your mom, who loves you more than anything in the world. And you have me now. It's all we need." Ethan seemed to consider this for a moment, then smiled. "Can I sleep with you guys tonight?" That night, lying in bed with Ethan nestled between him and Sarah, Jason thought about how his son, even so young, already understood so much about what really mattered. His cell phone vibrated with a message from Kevin. "Saw the interview? I'm with you, brother. She won't hurt this family again." Jason looked at Sarah, who had fallen asleep hugging Ethan. In the dark, he could hear the soft breathing of the two, the most precious sound in the world. Catherine might have the power, the media, the ability to distort the truth. But there, in that bed, was the only truth that mattered. Catherine's interview had exactly the effect she intended. In the following days, the media was divided. Some people began to question the original version of the story, suggesting that perhaps Sarah had really refused legitimate help for dubious reasons. It was on a Monday morning that the first sign of a real problem appeared. Ethan returned from school early, brought by his teacher. His little face was stained with tears. "What happened?" asked Sarah, welcoming her son into her arms as the teacher explained the situation. "Some parents saw the interview," said the teacher, visibly embarrassed. "The children heard conversations at home and, well, there were unpleasant comments during recess." Jason, who was working in his improvised home office, joined them when he heard the voices. "What kind of comments?" he asked, his voice tense. "They said my mom is a liar," sobbed Ethan. "That she hid you from the world because she wanted money." Sarah paled, holding Ethan tighter against her. The teacher continued. "We tried to intervene as soon as we knew, but maybe it would be good for you to talk to the school administration. Establish some protocols to protect Ethan." After the teacher left, the family gathered in the living room. Ethan, still sniffling, held his favorite toy car like a shield. "Son," began Jason, sitting beside him, "remember when we talked about people who don't know how to deal with the truth?" Ethan nodded. "Sometimes these people manage to make other people believe them. But do you know what's stronger than any lie?" "What?" "This right here." Jason hugged his son and Sarah together. "Our family. Our truth." Sarah wiped away a discreet tear. "Ethan, darling, want to know a secret?" The boy raised his eyes, curious. "When you were a baby, I kept all your photos in a special album. Every smile, every important moment. And do you know why?" Ethan shook his head. "Because I knew that one day your dad would want to know every moment he missed. I never wanted to hide you, my love. I just wanted to protect you until I was sure we would be safe." "Can I see the photos?" asked Ethan, his eyes shining with renewed interest. Sarah fetched the album, kept like a treasure in her dresser. The pages were worn from being leafed through so much, each photo carefully dated and commented on in Sarah's delicate handwriting. "Look," she pointed, "this was your first smile." "And how did you know it was the first?" asked Ethan. "Because I didn't miss a single second of your life, my love. I was there at every moment, keeping everything in my heart and in this album, waiting for the day when we could share it with your dad." Jason observed the photos with a lump in his throat. Ethan, as a newborn, his first Steps, his first birthday, precious moments that he had missed. Is there room for more photos? Ethan suddenly asked. Of course there is, replied Sarah. Why? Because now we can take photos with Dad too. Then the album will have our complete story. Jason picked up his son, feeling his heart overflow with love. How about we start now? We can have a picnic on the beach and take lots of photos. Can I bring my cars? All of them, promised Jason. While they were preparing the picnic basket, Jason's cell phone rang. It was Kevin. I need to warn you, he said, his voice urgent. Catherine is planning something bigger. She hired a team of private investigators to dig into Sarah's past. What does she hope to find? Asked Jason, moving away so that Ethan wouldn't hear. Anything she can use. She's desperate, Jason. She's lost the party's support. The polls are terrible. She's treating this as her last chance to recover her image. Tell her that if she tries to hurt my family again... I know, interrupted Kevin. I'm keeping an eye out. She won't get anything through me this time. When he hung up, Jason found Sarah watching him. Catherine? She asked. He nodded. But we won't let her ruin our day. Ethan needs happy moments, not more worries. Sarah smiled, picking up the picnic basket. You know, for years I lived in fear of what she could do. Now I have you by my side. I'm not alone anymore. Never again, promised Jason, kissing her softly. The picnic on the beach turned into a magical afternoon. Ethan ran across the sand, his toy cars leaving tracks that were erased by the gentle waves. Sarah and Jason took photos, capturing every smile, every moment of pure joy. Look, Dad, shouted Ethan, pointing to the horizon. A boat! Jason observed the sailboat cutting through the blue sea in the distance. Want to go on a boat someday, champ? Ethan's eyes widened with excitement. Can we? Of course we can. How about on your birthday? Sarah smiled, photographing the expression of pure happiness on her son's face. It was amazing how, even with all the worries surrounding them, Ethan could find joy in the simplest things. Later, as the sun began to set, Ethan fell asleep in his father's lap, exhausted from so much play. Sarah took the opportunity to show Jason something she had kept saved. Remember when I told you about keeping all his photos? She asked, removing an envelope from her purse. I also kept this. Inside the envelope were dozens of little letters, written in Ethan's childish handwriting over the years. Dear Daddy, one of them began, dated when Ethan was 4 years old. Mommy said that one day you'll find me. Until then, I'm keeping all my drawings to show you. Jason felt tears in his eyes as he read letter after letter, small pieces of his son's heart, preserved with so much love by Sarah. Why are you showing me this now? He asked softly. Because I want you to understand, replied Sarah, her voice choked. I never wanted to separate you two. Every letter he wrote, I kept. Every time he asked about you, I told him that one day we would meet. I never let him lose hope. How did you manage? All that pressure, Catherine's threats? For him, Sarah caressed Ethan's sleeping hair. Everything I did was for him. And now seeing you two together, I know it was worth every moment of fear, every night of uncertainty. Jason's cell phone vibrated with a message from Angela. The investigator hired by Catherine was here. She asked many questions about Sarah's past. Jason showed the message to Sarah, who sighed. What does she expect to find? My life has always been an open book. I worked, raised my son, never did anything wrong. She's desperate, said Jason. Desperate people do crazy things. I'm not afraid of her, declared Sarah, her voice firm. Not anymore. She can investigate all she wants. The only story she'll find is that of a mother who did everything to protect her son. Ethan stirred in his father's lap, murmuring something about boats and cars in his sleep. Jason adjusted him better in his arms, amazed at how something so small could contain so much love, so much purity. You know what's funny? He commented. Catherine always wanted power, money, influence, and in the end, the real power was here, in a mother's love for her son, in the strength of a woman who faced the world alone to protect what is most precious. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, watching the sun dive into the horizon. I'm not alone anymore, she whispered. No, agreed Jason. Now we're a fortress, and this time, Catherine will discover that not all the power in the world can bring down a family united by love. The sky exploded with colors as they remained there, 3 hearts beating in sync, protected by something much stronger than any threat: the truth of their love, the strength of their union, the certainty that, together, they could face any storm. The news came through Angela on a Thursday morning. Catherine had called another press conference, claiming to have bombshell discoveries about the case. Sarah's heart froze as she read the headlines in the online newspapers. She has nothing, assured Kevin, who had become an unlikely ally in recent weeks. I went through all the investigators' reports. Sarah is literally the most upright person I've ever met. But there was something different this time. Catherine seemed too confident, as if she held a secret trump card. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon, and the entire national media was in an uproar with anticipation. "I won't let her hurt our family again," declared Jason, hastily organizing a counter press conference at the same time. That's when the phone rang. It was Emma, Sarah's former colleague from the diner where it all began. "Sarah," her voice was shaky. "Catherine was here. She's trying to convince me to lie. She wants me to say that you planned everything, that you set up the meeting with Jason that night." Sarah felt her legs weaken. Jason supported her, putting the phone on speaker. "What else, Emma?" he asked. "She offered money, a lot of money, said no one would ever know the truth, that I just had to confirm her version." "And you—" Sarah's voice trembled. "What kind of friend do you think I am?" replied Emma, now with firmness in her voice. "I recorded everything, every word, every offer, every threat." The silence that followed was broken by Ethan, who came running into the room with a new drawing. "Look, Mommy, I drew our family on the boat." Sarah hugged her son, her tears wetting his hair. In the colorful drawing, 4 smiling figures, he, Sarah, Jason, and even Uncle Kevin, sailed in a blue boat under a bright sun. "It's beautiful, my love," she whispered. Jason made a decision at that moment. "Emma, would you be willing to participate in our press conference? Tell your story, show the recordings." "Of course I would," she replied without hesitation. "It's about time that woman learned she can't buy everyone." The following hours were a whirlwind of preparations. Angela mobilized the press, Kevin ensured that all evidence was organized, and Sarah finally decided it was time to fight with all her strength. "Ethan," she called, sitting with her son. "Mommy and Daddy need to do something very important today. You're going to stay with Mrs. Bennett, okay?" "Is it because of the bad lady from TV?" he asked, surprising his parents with his perception. "Yes, son," replied Jason, kneeling beside them. "But do you know what's more important?" "What?" "That no matter what happens, our love is stronger than any lie." Ethan smiled, that pure smile that illuminated the entire world. "I know, Dad. It's like in my drawing, we're all together in the same boat." Sarah and Jason exchanged emotional looks. Somehow, their 5-year-old son had perfectly summarized the situation. The afternoon arrived with a suffocating intensity. In the city's convention center, 2 different rooms were preparing for press conferences that would change many lives. Catherine, elegant in her characteristic red outfit, adjusted her papers with a confident smile. She didn't know that, in the room next door, a much more powerful force than money or influence was about to manifest. The truth, sustained by the love of a family. "Are you ready?" asked Jason, holding Sarah's hand as they waited backstage. She looked at Ethan's drawing, which she had folded and placed in her pocket like a talisman. "Now I am. Let's show her that some things are priceless." Emma arrived at the last minute, carrying her cell phone with the recordings like a weapon. Kevin, Angela, and a team of lawyers completed the group that would take the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," Catherine's voice echoed from the room next door, beginning her press conference. "Today I will reveal the true story behind this scandal." Sarah took a deep breath, clutching the drawing in her pocket. It was time for the truth to finally prevail over lies. The final confrontation between truth and lies lasted exactly 2 hours. While Catherine presented her carefully constructed version of the facts in one room in the other, a very different story unfolded. Sarah, with a strength she didn't know she possessed, told her complete story for the first time. Each moment of fear, each night of solitude, each veiled threat, her voice, once timid, echoed with the force of someone who could finally be completely honest. Emma presented the recordings, which showed Catherine offering money in exchange for lies, threatening when she couldn't get what she wanted. Angela brought the original documents that proved the tampering of the prenuptial agreement, but the most impactful moment came when Kevin stood up to speak. My sister-in-law, Senator Catherine Miller, built her career defending family values, he began. But today I'm going to tell you how she destroyed a family out of ambition, how she threatened a single mother, how she manipulated documents, how she transformed lies into her truth. The revelations were devastating. Catherine, upon learning what was happening in the room next door, tried to interrupt her own press conference, but it was too late. The truth, like an unstoppable wave, had already begun to spread. When it was all over, when the last camera was turned off and the last journalist left, Sarah found Ethan's drawing in her pocket, now crumpled, from being held so tightly during the tense hours. "Let's go home," Jason said softly. "Ethan is waiting." At home, they found their son asleep on the sofa, surrounded by his toy cars and a new half-finished drawing. Mrs. Bennet dozed in a nearby armchair. "How did it go?" she asked, waking up with their arrival. "It's over," replied Sarah, her voice laden with relief. "It's finally over." The next morning, the headlines were unanimous. Catherine's political career was finished. The party had withdrawn its support, and an official investigation would be opened to investigate her actions. But for Sarah, Jason, and Ethan, the headlines no longer mattered. They had more important matters to attend to. "So, when are we going?" "On the boat?" asked Ethan during breakfast, still in his pajamas and with his hair tousled. "How about today?" suggested Jason. "I think we deserve to celebrate." The day at sea was perfect. Ethan, amazed with each wave, each seagull, each moment, filled the rented boat with his laughter. Kevin joined them, bringing sandwiches and funny stories from his and Jason's childhood. At sunset, anchored in a small cove, Ethan asked a question that caught everyone by surprise. "Dad, why don't some people know that love is more important than money?" The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Sarah answered, "Because they never had a treasure like you, my love." Jason hugged them both, feeling his heart overflow. There, in that small boat gently swaying in the calm waters, was everything that really mattered. Months passed. Catherine left the country after the investigations began to deepen. Kevin gradually regained his place in the family, now as a present and loving uncle. The company, under new direction, regained its stability. But the biggest change happened silently, in the daily life of a family that learned that true love doesn't need grand gestures or declarations. It's in the small moments, in shared laughter, in colorful drawings pinned to the refrigerator. On an ordinary afternoon, Ethan found Sarah's old album, the one with his baby photos. Leafing through the pages, he reached the most recent ones, now full of photos of the complete family. Days at the beach, boat rides, picnics in the garden. "Mom," he called, "is there still space for more photos?" "Always, my love," replied Sarah, sitting beside him. "Our story is just beginning." Jason, observing the scene, thought about how ironic life was. He had spent years building a business empire, accumulating power and influence, thinking that was success. But his true treasure was there, in that simple room with a boy who liked toy cars and drawings, and a woman who had enough strength to face the world for love. "You know what?" he said, joining them on the sofa. "I think we need a new album. This one is getting too small for so much love." Ethan smiled, that smile that was just like his father's, and Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears of happiness. After all, some stories